The sound of splintering wood cuts through Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata like a scream. Silence follows, heavy and suffocating. As 300 people in the Riverside Community Center watch my 12-year-old daughter Aaliyah stare at the remains of her violin scattered across the stage floor. The woman standing over her, still clutching the metal folding chair she used as a weapon, breathes heavily through flared nostrils. "Finally," she declares, her voice echoing through the stunned auditorium. Some peace and quiet from that noise pollution. I rise from my seat in the third row, my hands trembling with a rage so pure it threatens to consume everything in its path. The woman, mid-50s, blonde bob, wearing a cream-colored blazer with an HOA board member pin, doesn't notice me moving toward the stage. She's too busy addressing the crowd like she's done them all a favor. "I'm Margaret Wellington, HOA board president," she announces, straightening her blazer, "and I simply won't tolerate this racket disrupting our community standards." Aaliyah kneels beside her destroyed instrument, tears streaming down her cheeks as she touches the broken neck of the violin that took me 3 years to save for. The same violin that belonged to her grandmother, my mother, who died when Aaliyah was 7. The same violin that carried 4 generations of music in our family. The recital had started like any other Saturday evening community event. Families scattered throughout the auditorium, some checking phones, others chatting quietly while children performed. Aaliyah was 6th on the program, scheduled between a 10-year-old pianist playing chopsticks and twin brothers attempting a clarinet duet. Nothing special, nothing threatening, just a young girl sharing her gift with neighbors. But Margaret Wellington had been watching. I'd noticed her during the previous performances, shifting restlessly in her front row seat, muttering under her breath. When the Patterson twins hit a particularly sour note during their duet, she nodded approvingly. When little Emma stumbled through her piano piece, Margaret clapped politely. But the moment Aaliyah stepped onto the stage, something changed in the woman's demeanor. My daughter had chosen Pachelbel's Canon in D, a piece she'd been perfecting for 8 months. Her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, called it ambitious for someone her age. But Aaliyah had fallen in love with the melody after hearing it at her cousin's wedding. She practiced 2 hours every morning before school, and another hour after dinner, her small fingers dancing across the strings with increasing confidence. The first notes had floated through the auditorium like whispered promises. Aaliyah stood poised, her back straight, her chin resting gently on the violin's shoulder. She'd worn her best-dressed navy blue with tiny silver stars that caught the stage lights and had braided her hair with the silver ribbon her grandmother left her. Everything about that moment was perfect. Until Margaret Wellington decided it wasn't. Now I watch my daughter's world crumble as Margaret adjusts her blazer and surveys the wreckage with satisfaction. The other performers, still waiting backstage, peer through the curtains with wide eyes. Parents throughout the auditorium sit frozen, uncertain whether this is somehow part of the program. "Excuse me," I call out, my voice carrying across the silent space as I reach the stage steps. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" Margaret turns toward me with the condescending smile reserved for people she considers beneath her notice. "I'm maintaining community standards, sir. This kind of—" She waves dismissively at the violin fragments. "Noise has no place in a family-friendly venue." Noise. The word comes out sharper than I intended. Several people in the audience lean forward, sensing the tension crackling between us. My daughter was performing classical music. "Classical music requires skill and training," Margaret replies, her smile becoming more patronizing. "What we just heard was amateur hour. Frankly, it was insulting to everyone who appreciates real music." Aaliyah looks up at me from where she kneels beside her broken violin, her eyes red with tears and confusion. In them, I see the same look my mother had when the music store owner in Birmingham told her that colored folks couldn't afford real instruments. The same look I carried for years until I learned that success was the best response to ignorance. Amateur hour, I repeat, climbing the steps to join my daughter on stage. Tell me, Mrs. Wellington, what qualifies you to judge musical performance? She straightens to her full height, which puts her eye level with my shoulder. I've been HOA president for 12 years. I organized this recital series to bring culture to our community. And I know quality when I hear it. Quality, I murmur, kneeling beside Aaliyah to examine the violin's remains. The bridge has snapped completely. The strings curl like broken promises. 3 generations of family history reduced to splinters and scrap metal. Margaret continues her lecture to the increasingly uncomfortable audience. Look, I'm not saying the child can't learn, but there's a time and place for practice. And it's not during a community event where families expect professional-level entertainment. Professional-level entertainment, I echo, standing slowly and facing her. From 12-year-olds. From anyone performing in public. She snaps. We have standards in this community. Property values to maintain. If we allow just anyone to get up here and make noise. The woman beside me stops mid-sentence. Something in my expression has finally penetrated her self-righteous bubble. The audience, too, has gone completely silent. Even the children backstage have stopped whispering. Just anyone, I repeat, my voice dangerously quiet. What exactly do you mean by that, Mrs. Wellington? Her face flushes pink, but she doubles down. I mean that not everyone has the background or breeding necessary for classical music. It's not natural for some people. The auditorium erupts in gasps and uncomfortable murmurs. Parents exchange shocked glances. Children who were old enough to understand the implications of her words stare with wide eyes. I feel Aaliyah's small hand slip into mine, trusting me to handle this woman who has just revealed herself as something far worse than a cultural snob. She's exposed the ugly truth that many of us suspected, but hoped wasn't real in 2024. Not natural, I say, my voice carrying to every corner of the auditorium. For some people. Margaret realizes she's crossed a line but lacks the wisdom to retreat. Instead, she pushes forward like a runaway train. I'm simply saying that classical music comes from a specific cultural tradition, European tradition, and when people try to appropriate it without proper understanding. Appropriate it, I interrupt. Like my daughter just did? Well, yes. She glances around the auditorium, seeming to notice for the first time that her words aren't being received with the support she expected. I'm not being racist. I'm being realistic about cultural heritage and artistic integrity. The word racist hangs in the air like smoke from a house fire. Parents shift uncomfortably. Someone in the back row coughs. A baby starts crying and is quickly hushed. I squeeze Aaliyah's hand gently and step closer to Margaret Wellington. Mrs. Wellington, before we continue this conversation about cultural heritage and artistic integrity, I think there's something you should know about me. She crosses her arms defensively. Oh, and what's that? I reach into my jacket pocket and withdraw my business card holder, selecting one card and extending it to her. My name is Dr. Marcus Thompson. I'm the State Director of Music Equity and Cultural Access for the Department of Education. The color drains from her face as she reads the card. Her hands begin to tremble slightly. I oversee funding for all public school music programs in this state. I continue. my voice carrying clearly to every seat in the auditorium. I evaluate cultural enrichment grants for communities exactly like this one. And I investigate complaints about discrimination in educational and community arts programs. Margaret's mouth opens and closes like a fish gasping for air. The silence in the auditorium has become so complete that the hum of the air conditioning sounds like a jet engine. Furthermore, I continue, I hold advanced degrees in music education and ethnomusicology from Juilliard and Yale. My doctoral dissertation was on the African American contributions to classical music interpretation. And the little girl whose violin you just destroyed, she's been studying with the principal violinist from the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra via video lessons that I arranged through the state's gifted education program. The revelation hits the audience like a physical wave. People lean forward in their seats. Someone in the middle section whispers, "Oh my God." A teenager in the back pulls out his phone and starts recording. Margaret Wellington staggers backward as if I've struck her. I didn't know." "You didn't know because you made assumptions." I reply, "You saw a black child with a violin and decided she didn't belong here. You heard music that challenged your preconceptions and labeled it noise. You destroyed a family heirloom worth $15,000 because you couldn't imagine that excellence might come in a package that didn't match your expectations." "15,000, she gasps. "It was my mother's violin." Aaliyah speaks for the first time since the attack, her voice small but steady. "She played in the Birmingham Orchestra before she died. Daddy saved all his Christmas money for 3 years to buy it back from the pawn shop after Grandma got sick." The collective intake of breath from the audience is audible. Several people in the front rows have tears in their eyes. The teenager who's been recording holds his phone higher. Margaret Wellington looks at the violin fragments scattered around her feet, as if seeing them for the first time. This is all a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding." I correct her. "This is exactly what you intended. You wanted to silence my daughter because her success threatens your worldview. You wanted to humiliate her because her talent exposes your ignorance. And you wanted to assert your power because you can't stand the idea that a 12-year-old black girl might be better at something than you think she has the right to be." The auditorium has become electric with tension. Parents are pulling out their phones. Children are crying. The teenager in the back has moved closer, still recording. Margaret Wellington looks around desperately for support that isn't coming. "Now," I continue, "let's discuss the consequences of your actions. First, you've committed assault and battery against a minor in front of 300 witnesses. Second, you've destroyed private property worth more than the felony threshold in this state. Third, you've violated federal civil rights laws by targeting my daughter based on her race." Mrs. Rodriguez, Aaliyah's violin teacher, has appeared from backstage and is kneeling beside the broken instrument. She looks up at me with tears in her eyes. "Dr. Thompson, this violin, it's irreplaceable. The craftsmanship, the age, the history." "I know," I reply, my voice heavy with grief for the loss and fury at the woman who caused it. "My mother played this violin in the Birmingham Orchestra in 1963. She was the only black musician in the ensemble. She faced death threats for taking that seat, but she never missed a performance." Margaret Wellington's face has gone completely white. She stumbles backward, nearly tripping over the metal chair she used as a weapon. "I'm sorry," she whispers. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know about the history." "You didn't want to know," I reply. "You made your judgment the moment you saw my daughter walk onto this stage. Everything since then has been you defending that judgment instead of questioning it." The community center director, a nervous man in his 60s, finally finds his voice. "Mrs. Wellington, I think you need to leave immediately. We'll be filing a police report about this incident. Police, she gasps. But this was just… I mean, surely we can work this out among ourselves. No, I say firmly. We can't. My daughter has been assaulted. Our family has been robbed of an irreplaceable heirloom. And an entire community has witnessed a hate crime. This goes through proper legal channels. As if summoned by my words, 2 police officers enter through the back doors of the auditorium. Someone must have called them during the confrontation. They stride down the center aisle, their radios crackling with static. We received reports of a disturbance. The older officer announces as he reaches the stage. What's the situation here? Margaret Wellington opens her mouth to speak, but I step forward first. Officer, my name is Dr. Marcus Thompson. This woman just attacked my 12-year-old daughter and destroyed her violin during a community recital. I have my state credentials with me, and there are 300 witnesses to the assault. The officer looks at the violin fragments, then at Margaret Wellington, then at me. Sir, are you saying this woman struck your child? She used that metal chair to destroy my daughter's violin, while Aaliyah was holding it. I explain. She deliberately targeted my child because of her race, then made several explicitly racist statements to justify her actions. Margaret Wellington finally finds her voice again. Officers, this is all a terrible misunderstanding. I'm the HOA president. I was simply trying to maintain order during our community event. The music was inappropriate for the venue. Inappropriate how? The younger officer asks, pulling out his notebook. It was loud and not suitable for families. Ma'am, the officer continues, did you destroy this violin? Margaret glances around the auditorium at the 300 faces staring at her with a mixture of disgust and disbelief. Yes, but it was necessary to restore order. By attacking a child, the officer confirms. I didn't attack anyone, she protests. I removed a disruptive influence from our community event. The teenager with the phone steps forward. Officer, I recorded the whole thing. She called the music noise pollution and said black people don't have the breeding for classical music. Then she grabbed that chair and smashed the violin while the girl was still playing. The officers exchange glances. The older one speaks into his radio, requesting backup and a supervisor. The younger one approaches Margaret Wellington with handcuffs. Ma'am, you're under arrest for assault, destruction of property, and violation of civil rights. You have the right to remain silent. As the Miranda rights echo through the auditorium, Margaret Wellington's composure finally cracks completely. This is insane, she shrieks. I'm being arrested for maintaining community standards. These people don't belong here. This isn't their culture. Her words cement her fate. Parents throughout the auditorium shake their heads in disgust. Several people are openly recording now. The community center director covers his face with his hands. But my attention is focused on Aaliyah, who has been silently gathering the pieces of her broken violin. She holds the largest fragment part of the body, with my mother's initials, carved near the bridge, and looks up at me with eyes full of questions. Daddy, she whispers, will I ever be able to play Grandma's song again? The song she means is Amazing Grace, my mother's favorite hymn. She used to play it every Sunday evening after church, standing by our living room window as the sun set over Birmingham. It was the first piece she taught me, and the first piece I taught Aaliyah. 3 generations of love passed down through strings and wood. I kneel beside my daughter and gather her into my arms, violin fragments and all. Baby girl, some things can be replaced, and some things can be repaired. But the music that lives inside you, the gift that Grandma gave us, that can never be broken. Mrs. Rodriguez approaches us hesitantly. Dr. Thompson, I've been teaching for 25 years, and I've never seen a student with Aaliyah's natural ability. If you'll allow me, I'd like to speak with some colleagues about finding another violin for her. Thank you, I reply, but that's not necessary. Tomorrow morning, I'm driving to New York to visit a violin maker I know. We're going to commission a new instrument, something worthy of my daughter's talent and my mother's legacy. The police officers have finished arresting Margaret Wellington and are escorting her toward the exit. As she passes our small group on the stage, she tries one last desperate appeal. Dr. Thompson, please, I made a mistake. Can't we settle this privately? Think about the community. I stand slowly, still holding Aaliyah's hand. Mrs. Wellington, the community is exactly what I'm thinking about. Every child in this auditorium just learned that talent has no color, that excellence can come from anywhere, and that bullies who hide behind authority will face consequences for their actions. She's dragged away, still protesting her innocence, her voice echoing down the hallway until the doors close behind her. The auditorium remains silent for several moments after her departure. Then, slowly, someone in the back row begins to clap. Others join in. Within seconds, the entire audience is on their feet, applauding not just for Aaliyah, but for justice served and truth revealed. The community center director takes the stage microphone with shaking hands. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to apologize on behalf of our organization for what happened here tonight. Mrs. Wellington's actions and words do not represent our values or our community. He pauses, looking directly at Aaliyah and me. Dr. Thompson, your daughter's performance was beautiful. We would be honored to have her return next month as our featured artist, and we'll make sure she has a proper sound system and security to prevent any future disruptions. Aaliyah looks up at me questioningly. Despite everything that's happened, despite the trauma and the loss, I can see the musician in her still burning bright. She wants to play again. She needs to play again. What do you think, sweetheart? I ask her, ready to show this community what real music sounds like. She nods slowly, then looks out at the audience. Will you come hear me play Grandma's song? The response is immediate and overwhelming. Yes, comes from dozens of voices throughout the auditorium. Parents are crying. Children are cheering. The teenager who recorded everything is still filming, capturing this moment of healing and hope. Mrs. Rodriguez steps forward again. Actually, Dr. Thompson, if I might make a suggestion, several of my advanced students attend schools in this district. What if we organized a proper recital next month? A celebration of musical diversity. Aaliyah could play, but so could students from different backgrounds and traditions. The idea catches fire immediately. Parents begin calling out suggestions. My son plays piano. My daughter sings opera. We have a mariachi group at our school. I feel something shift in the auditorium. The ugly moment that Margaret Wellington created has become a catalyst for something beautiful. Her attempt to divide and diminish has instead unified and strengthened. 3 weeks later, I stand in the same auditorium watching Aaliyah tune her new violin. It's a magnificent instrument, crafted by a master violin maker in New York who waived half his fee when he heard our story. The wood is aged and warm, the varnish gleaming under the stage lights. But most importantly, it carries forward the music that Margaret Wellington tried to silence. The Harmony and Heritage Recital has drawn over 500 people, Representatives from 3 school districts are here, along with the mayor, 2 city council members, and a reporter from the state newspaper. The story of Margaret Wellington's arrest has sparked a broader conversation about race and access in the arts. Margaret herself is facing multiple charges. The video of her attack and racist statements went viral within hours of the incident. She's been removed from the HOA board, fired from her job at a local bank, and has become the subject of a federal civil rights investigation. Her attempts to portray herself as the victim have fallen flat in the face of overwhelming evidence and community condemnation. But tonight isn't about Margaret Wellington. Tonight is about music and community and the power of art to bring people together. Aaliyah steps to the center of the stage in a new dress, deep purple with silver musical notes embroidered around the hem. She raises her violin to her shoulder and looks out at the audience with confidence that has been tested and proven stronger than hatred. I'd like to dedicate this performance to my grandmother, who taught me that music belongs to everyone who's brave enough to make it, she announces, and to my community, who reminded me that love is always louder than hate. The first notes of Amazing Grace fill the auditorium, pure and clear and full of promise. But this time, Aaliyah isn't alone. Mrs. Rodriguez's mariachi students join in with guitars and vocals. The high school jazz ensemble adds brass and percussion. Children from the youth choir sing in harmony. What emerges is something Margaret Wellington could never have imagined: a celebration of musical diversity that honors tradition while creating something entirely new. African American spirituals blend with Mexican folk melodies. Classical techniques support contemporary interpretations. Every culture represented in our community contributes to a sound that is uniquely, beautifully ours. As the final notes fade away, the audience erupts in applause that seems to go on forever. People are crying, hugging, cheering. Children who were scared 3 weeks ago now stand proudly with their instruments, ready to be part of this musical community. I think about my mother, who faced death threats for claiming her place in the Birmingham Orchestra. I think about the violin that was destroyed and the violin that was reborn. I think about the woman who tried to silence my daughter and the community that chose to amplify her voice instead. Most of all, I think about the lesson that every child in this auditorium learned tonight, that talent has no color, that excellence can come from anywhere, and that music, real music, is the sound of people coming together, despite their differences, to create something beautiful. As we pack up Aaliyah's new violin after the recital, she looks up at me with eyes bright with joy and possibility. "Daddy, do you think Grandma would have liked tonight?" I think about my mother's dream of a world where music could bridge any divide, where talent would be recognized regardless of the package it came in, where children like Aaliyah could stand on any stage and be celebrated for their gifts. "Baby girl," I tell her, "I think Grandma's been smiling all evening long." And in the warm afterglow of applause and community, and music that heals instead of divides, I know that Margaret Wellington's attempt to destroy something beautiful has instead helped create something even more powerful, a community that chose love over hate, inclusion over exclusion, and harmony over discord. The music plays on, as it always has, as it always will, and my daughter's voice, strong and clear and unafraid, adds its note to the eternal song of justice, hope, and the unbreakable power of the human spirit to overcome hatred with art.